final episode of Parasyte the Maxim. We get to learn that mankind is the true monster after all. The final episode of Parasyte the Maxim is a stark contrast to the previous episode, which basically just evolved into a big badass monster battle. Ironically, the final episode also features a monster battle, except that it's between humans. This episode sees the return of Origami, the infamous serial killer, who has a chance encounter with both Shinichi and Satomi, in what is honestly one of the creepiest scenes of the entire series, and I especially love how his scene sort of came full circle, where he was teased in the very first episode, and ends up being the final opponent for Shinichi at the very end of this week's episode. But one of the things that's really important about this one is the big lesson we learn, of course, from Migi when he decides to go bye-bye. Yeah, Migi's pretty much done. It seems like after spending some time in Goto's body, he can no longer sort of materialize, and he decides to finally say his goodbyes to Shinichi, and I love how it's actually done in the form of a dream. We've seen sequences like this before where we've seen like the big monstrous skeletal form of Migi. This time it's a much more smaller, more degraded version, and he's doing this in a dream so that he can sort of affect Shinichi's mind in a way to make it seem like as if this was all a dream the entire time. However, there's no way that he'd be able to forget all of the people that were involved in all of these incidents, all the people who were caught in the crossfire, those who were killed, just like his mother and Kana, and even Migi himself. And it's a really heartbreaking and very interesting scene, and it sort of puts everything in perspective for Shinichi, because in many ways he's lost a great friend, and at the same time he has to be incredibly happy over the fact that he has his regular right hand back and can just live like a normal human. However, there is the fear of the fact that there are still some parasites in the world who seem to have actually just assimilated with society and don't seem to want to attack anyone anymore. It's really interesting how at the end of the day they really could just end up coexisting with people. It's just the influence of mankind and what they have done which has caused a certain section of them to become war-hungry like Goto and sort of want to take over. It's really strange how the human emotions and influence have sort of like dominated this series, which is actually all about alien creatures. And they didn't really explain what the parasites actually were, which I'm okay with this. You know, I don't really have a problem with it at all. The main reason being that it's not really the whole point of the show. The final half of the episode is when things really start to pick up. Shinichi and Satomi are going on a date, and Shinichi finally realizes that Origami's actually been following them the entire time, and eventually Origami takes Satomi as a hostage. They go up to a rooftop, and this big standoff takes place. A couple of people are killed. Things get really disturbing, and this scene is really important because it really drives home the fact that Origami is more monstrous than any parasite that we have actually seen in this series. And Satomi even agrees. At first, she's completely horrified, but then she starts speaking out and telling Shinichi to go after the police. It doesn't even matter what's going to happen. Shinichi finally decides to charge him. Origami pushes Satomi aside, and they start to attack each other in a scene that is really, really intense, where ironically, Shinichi's arm ends up getting stabbed, and then he ends up decking Origami right in the face. And this is the scene that blew my mind the most because I honestly thought it was going to go in an incredibly dark direction. And that's when Satomi actually fell over the side and he tried to grab her with his right hand, but since he didn't have Migi anymore, he wasn't going to be able to stretch it out a la Mr. Fantastic Luffy from the Straw Hat Pirates. And it almost seemed like, yes, she was going to die at first, when suddenly we get to see that he actually did grab her. Was this Migi? Was this just through the power of Shinichi? I don't know, it's up for interpretation, but I'd like to think that Migi actually helped out a little bit there. He never really said that he would be dead, just that he really wouldn't be back for quite some time, and that basically it'd be the same as Shinichi getting his right hand back. There is the possibility that Migi could just pop up and say hello someday. I don't know when that's going to happen. All I know is it was a pretty fantastic way to end this week's episode with Shinichi and Satomi having a wonderful reunion with each other, and she doesn't even seem all that freaked out over learning the fact that apparently he is half parasite, but he doesn't really have any evidence anymore aside from the weird freaky scars all over his chest and back, but that's pretty much it. That is the end of the series. We learn that we have to sort of respect life a little bit. We need to sort of put it more in perspective. That's really what the show is trying to do here. It's trying to let us know that we are the parasites simply living on the earth, and that if we want to love ourselves, we have to love the earth and to love the earth we must love ourselves. It's a little cheesy and heavy-handed, but it's a pretty nice way to end this series. So what's the rundown on the final episode of Parasyte the Maxim? Holy crap, what a ride! I had no idea it was going to go in a direction like this, especially how the series started out. I thought it was going to be a little more ridiculous than it was, but this series was surprisingly grounded. Especially for the material that it was working with, you know, it was all about these weird freaking monsters that were taking over. I thought it was going to turn into sort of like the big stereotypical alien invasion. We were going to see monsters in the streets, and it never really got that way. It was all still real secretive with all these organizations who didn't want to be seen by the humans whatsoever. And even by the end of the series, they're still all living in secrecy, and I think that's pretty interesting right there. The final episode is crazy because there's barely any Parasyte in it at all. You know, there's the short scene at the very beginning with Migi, and there's that one creepy dude who's eating steak with the nasty teeth. But that's pretty much it. The final episode is all about the struggle of mankind and what we have to go through every single day. And in a show called Parasyte, which is all about monsters and shit, that was really bold to make that the final episode of the series. Overall, though, I think this was a pretty successful anime series. It had some really great sci-fi and horror elements. It had a lot of action going for it. It had tons of character development. And that's something that I think is probably one of the strongest things about Parasyte, is how the character of Shinichi has changed and just turned more into an adult as the series has gone on, you know. You look at first episode Shinichi, completely different character. You know, he's basically just a young, naive high school kid. By the end of the series, kid's a freaking superhero. It's awesome. So, I thought it was a really good conclusion. It didn't explain everything about the Parasytes, but it didn't need to. And honestly, I think the entire series overall was really good. The final episode I thought was handled really well. It didn't blow me away as much as I was hoping it would, but it was still an incredibly high-quality episode of the series, just like the rest. So I'm going to give the final episode of the series a 4 out of 5. Super high-quality series that you definitely have to check out, especially now that it is completed. Watch it from beginning to end, then read the manga version, and then, if you're still feeling hungry, watch the live-action version. Think of it as dessert. Thank you guys for watching my reviews of Parasyte the Maxim. It has been one hell of a journey. It's amazing to have another series under the Super Kami Guru 9000 belt. If you guys want to see any of the previous reviews of the episodes that I looked at, there will be a playlist on our channel. And remember, if you subscribe to our channel, you'll be able to see all of the latest anime and manga reviews that we are covering. The brand new spring anime season is coming up, and there's a lot of new shows, so stay tuned for that. If you guys want to see my reaction to the final episode of Parasyte the Maxim, I did a video for that. I'll put a link for that in the description box below. Thank you guys for watching my review of the final episode of Parasyte the Maxim. I thought it was a pretty good conclusion, but what did you guys think of the final episode of the series? Did you have any favorite moments? What did you think of the series in general? Did you have any favorite characters? Any favorite episodes? If they were to do a sequel to Parasyte the Maxim, what would you like to see? And what's the deal with the Parasytes anyway? Do you think they're aliens? Do you think they were man-made? Do you think it's pretty obvious because they showed the shots of Earth that they are aliens? Please tell me all your comments, your theories, in the comments section below. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, and remember, as always, stay dandy, baby.